Okay. Bonjour and welcome to this talk on the Birch bark canoe from the Anishinabeg Nation, featuring our special guest, Master Canoe Builder Chuck Commanda. Cette causerie se déroulera en anglais, mais vous êtes aussi invités à poser vos questions en français. We pay respect to the Algonquin people, who are the traditional guardians of this land and rivers. We acknowledge their long-standing relationship with this territory, which remains unceded. We pay respect to all Indigenous people in this region from all nations across Canada who call Ottawa home. I would like to say special thanks to our sponsors, the Canoe Club Pierre Radisson from the Outaouais and les Portageurs from Montreal, as well as the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society for the Ottawa Valley. I would like to say a big thank you to Chuck Commanda for sharing his beautiful pictures and stories. You will find his coordinates on this slide. If you are interested in joining him in a traditional canoe building project, or to invite him as a speaker to your organization or school. And without further ado, let's welcome Chuck and give him the floor.
Good evening, everyone. Kwe. Welcome to the presentation of the Canoe Club of the Outaouais. As you well know, I come from a very famous family. William Commanda is my grandfather. And what I wanted to emphasize, first of all, is when we first started learning how to make the canoe, we didn't know the role of the ladies. But after returning to making the canoe and reading extensively about the female role in the canoe, we realized that it wasn't just a man thing. It was a male and a female, because you need that balance in life. And so after seeing many pictures and realizing that my grandparents were a team, everything that I had read was true. And so I just wanted to emphasize that. And I started learning canoe making. I was at about 12 years old. And that's me up there with my grandmother. And that was one of the most famous canoes that we made. It's one of the most photographed canoes in the world. And that canoe is sitting at the Canadian Canoe Museum in Peterborough, Ontario. Okay, and at 20 years old, I decided to leave the craft go. I always thought that the grass was greener on the other side of the fence, only to realize 25, 30 years later, it was greener where I came from. And so now it was many years since my grandmother had passed away, and everybody made such a big fuss over my grandfather, his canoe building abilities. And so, like I said, I had done a lot of reading, seen a lot of pictures of the man and his wife. And so I decided to do something. And I returned to making birch bark crafts. At first, it wasn't the canoe. It was to make baskets. And that was in honor of my grandmother. And I used her family style. And I got so good at making the baskets, my partner then, we ended up being invited to the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. And we put on a display there. We had a 7-foot birch bark canoe. And we taught the staff of the museum how to make baskets. And during the 3 days we were there, there must have been about 25,000 people came by our table. And so by Sunday, I was having problems talking now. And so after returning home, I'm not sure if the audience realizes or knew that my grandfather had a gathering on his property in Kitigan Zibi every August. And it was called the Circle of All Nations. And so what that did is to be elders, sages, shamans from all over the world would come up to his property, and they'd do ceremonies and they'd pray for Mother Earth. And so I think it was in 2010, I got a call from William. He asked me to go home and he wanted to talk to me. And so I took the trip. I was living in Ottawa then. I took the trip, and when I got up there, he asked me if I wanted to make a canoe for him. And I said, why? He says, well, the theme for my gathering this year is the canoe or watercraft or water vessel. And he says, that's in honor of all the people of the world at one time or another in their history used some kind of a boat. And I says, yes, I'm okay with this. And I says, the only problem is I don't know where the canoe birch is. And so he went in the room and he did something. Maybe he offered tobacco, and then he told me, he says, you go back to where you were harvesting root. And I was harvesting root in Gatineau Park. And he says, you're going to find a tree there. And that's funny. I've been up and down. I think this is called Notch Road near Meech Lake. But anyways, I went up and down this road maybe 15 times, never seen that tree. And when I returned, and there it was right in front of me. And because we weren't allowed to cut trees down, I brought my ladder and we peeled the bark with the tree standing. And this was the first time I ever done that with a big tree. So I went back many years later and the tree survived for another 5 years. So we took the bark and we went to show my grandfather, and he gave me the passing grade and told me that was canoe birch, and I started to build a canoe. And so I went back to Ottawa, and this is a picture of my grandfather, Charlie. That would be my grandmother, Mary's father. And if you look to the one on the right is my grandfather, Charlie, my great-grandfather, Charlie, and his wife, my great-grandmother, Mary. And this is to confirm what I had mentioned earlier about the man and the wife, or the man and the woman. And as you can see, she was a big part of the canoe building, just like my grandmother was. And so this confirmed everything that I had already read, and and seeing pictures as time went on, I see a lot of pictures. Most of my canoe building has been up near Algonquin Park. And so I talked to a lot of the locals there, the Algonquin people, the Mami Winini. And they show me pictures of their grandfather, their father with their wife. And it just, like I said, confirmed everything that I had read about the canoe making, and the very important role that the woman played in constructing a birch bark canoe. But anyways, getting back to this is my little buddy. It was my mascot, and every canoe I made, I took him with me. Unfortunately, he passed away last May, so I have to look for a new mascot if I decide to have one. He was my lifelong buddy. I had him for 14 years, and everywhere I went, he came with me. And this canoe here was built in St. Catharines at the what did they call that there? The Celebration of Nations. So every September they have a gathering there, and they have performers, artists, elders from all over North America come there, and they either do their teachings. If it's an artist, they'll put on a display. In my case, I got to build a canoe there, which is fantastic. And now this canoe is sitting in the Performing Arts Center in St. Catharines, Ontario. Okay, so the meaning of the canoe to me, based on all the research and the teachings that I received from the spirit world, is This is an iconic symbol of Canadianism and what it is to be Canadian. And so what a better symbol of reconciliation. And so we reconcile between cultures. I learn about yours, you learn about mine, but more deeply is we reconcile within ourselves. And as I teach, when I talk to the kids in the high school, I explain myself, and then what I explain is each one of us at some point in our life did something that we're very ashamed of, or we did something stupid, and we cannot forgive ourselves. And so through the canoe, then we learn to accept what we have done as just a lesson, a teaching. And then therefore we reconcile within ourselves, and we're able to forgive ourselves, which brings us to the 7 sacred grandfather teachings. And the first one is love. And so through love, we learn to forgive. And therefore, through love, we learn to forgive ourselves. And that's where the healing begins. And so now if we go on down into the teachings, it's like the love, respect, wisdom, bravery, honesty, humility, and truth. So what we've come to understand about these teachings is every culture was given that by the Creator. It's just some of us have forgotten about it sooner than the others. Even our culture, even the Anishinaabe, the native people of North America, have forgotten this now. But if you look at this canoe, each teaching has an animal symbol behind it. And so on the canoe, bear's one of the teachings. I'm not exactly sure how they go in order. Turtle is there, beaver, and the buffalo. And if you go down the other side of the canoe, you'll see the Bigfoot, the Sasquatch, and then so on and so on. What the eagle is love. And so somewhere on my canoe, you're going to see all the 7 sacred grandfather teachings. And this canoe was made at Murphy's Point Provincial Park. All the material was gathered in the park. And so it has very deep meaning for them because they're a conservation group as well. And this, like I said, this bark, this canoe, all the material was harvested in the park. And Murphy's Point is only 20 minutes south of Perth, Ontario. And there you have it. And they took some photographs with the canoe on the water. And so if you go to Murphy's Point, you go to the visitor center, and this canoe is on display there. Okay, so if you want to move to the next picture, Jean-Francois. Okay, so the canoe to us was everything. And that was our vehicle to get around, as everyone may well know, especially here in the Outaouais and in parts of Ontario. There are so many rivers, lakes, streams, ponds, and without the canoe, we weren't moving very quickly. I mean, the canoe is not as fast as the modern vehicle, the car, the automobile. But nevertheless, this got us to where we were going in record time. And as I had mentioned to someone there a few nights ago, at the Canoe Museum in Peterborough, there is an authentic dugout Algonquin canoe. And we're not exactly sure because we don't have a written history. When in our history did we convert to birch bark? And so I have a degree in anthropology, and so the anthropologist in me talked to some archaeologists, and they tell me that they have some evidence that 3,500 to 4,000 years ago is when we made the switch over to birch bark. And like I said, we're not exactly sure when, why. We're just assuming because the dugout was very heavy to portage. So I'm thinking they tried many other different materials at the beginning, and they realized that at some point that the birch, because they were using birch for wigwams, that they probably decided to try it for a canoe, and lo and behold, it worked out for them. And so this is a picture of me beside my most memorable canoe. It's at the Canoe Museum in Peterborough once again. And that's the first time ever that I've made a 16-foot canoe. Why this is an important canoe to me is because my grandparents have 4 canoes there, 2 on display. And so they're building a new museum, and when the museum is finished, they'll be able to put all their canoes on display. And they have almost 600 plus canoes. My dream is to have my canoe sitting with my grandparents' canoe, and that will signify, well, when I did this canoe, it signified that I was no longer the student, I was the teacher now. And so the people that I had working with me were young Anishinaabe teenagers, young adults. And the idea was for me to pass on the knowledge that I have of canoe making to the young people, so that they start doing them in their communities. And so for the most part, it still has a long way to go before that happens. But on the good side is they're working with the ministry now, the Ministry of Natural Resources, to preserve the birch tree. Because that by doing this, then we return to our role in the medicine wheel. And in the medicine wheel, our part was to take care of the land and take care of the waters. And so now everyone that I talk to, they want to become protectors of the land, protectors of the waters. And so this to me is a good thing. Maybe not so good that not more of our native people are taking over the work, but they're at least working with the ministry to protect the land now, protect the birch trees. And this is why, to me, that's significant. And here we have, I'm harvesting with the help of, I got 4 students with me, and see, then we have a woman there. and we harvested this tree because it was supposed to be cut by the logging company. And so the logging company got upset that we stole their log, but the log is still there on the ground based on the coordinates of the GPS. They still can find their tree, their log. All we want is the skin. And so that's gets back to the relationship that we're building with the ministry, and we're trying to do the same thing over here in Quebec now, working with the ministry so that we can protect some of the species of trees at least, because every tree is being attacked, infected with either parasite, fungus, or insects. And so we're working closely with them. For the most part, they're accepting our Indigenous knowledge, and they're actually implementing some of that knowledge now, and when it comes to protecting the forest. And so this bark, it ended up making a nice canoe. And It's on display somewhere. I'm not exactly sure because I have almost up to 100 canoes now out there since I've been doing this 14 years now. So this is another canoe that was in a local high school in Ottawa West. And see on the left, we melted down the spruce sap, the resin, and we're cleaning it. And so once we clean all the resin, because you can see all the debris, the bark, the impurities inside, so we'll strain it through that filter bag we have. And then once we get it all pure, then we add the fat. And so it could be moose fat, beaver fat, bacon fat. And the reason why we put the fat in is it becomes flexible. But there's what I found is there's a very thin line between too much and not enough. If you put too much fat, even under the light, the hot light, it will melt and leak. Not enough fat, the minute you bring it in the coal, it breaks. So you have to be careful that you don't add too much and you don't add too little. And so once it was cleaned, as you can see the picture on the left or on the right, we're applying it now. And we got a lot of help from the students. A lot of the teaching staff came by, the principal. And we're almost at the end there of that canoe. And this canoe was done in Kingston. This canoe, I'm happy to say 90% of my help were women. I had 2 men come by and they were from the local prison. And the name of the prison is Joyceville Penitentiary. And they weren't as good as the women. For some reason, the women, when you tell them something, they do it the right way, right away. Excuse me. So this canoe was done in Kingston with the women. And as you can see, it's a very nice shape. The ribs went in, no breaking. And we're going to let it dry. We let that dry now for 2 days, and then we take that out, and then we measure them all. And then if you noticed on the left, all the ribs now are all cut, and we put in the sheeting, and the ribs go in permanently. Okay, so the one on the left is the canoe, the 16-foot canoe we did at the museum, the Canoe Museum in Peterborough. So the two guys there, the 2 men, are the apprentices that I took on with me. Okay, so the one on the far right, he's making his own canoes now. The one in the middle, unfortunately, he lost interest. It's probably because he had two children between then and now. And so instead of trying to make a living or reestablish the craft in his community, he had to go out and work to support his family. And then the one on the right is the canoe build that you've seen we were gumming. And this is about halfway. You see? And I think that's the principal in the back. Okay, this canoe was done at the at Murphy's Point Provincial Park again. And as you can see, we had just started there. We lifted the sides of the canoe and we clamped it down at the right height and we trimmed the bark, and now we're going to start putting the root on. And so depending on the help, when I was growing up, to do the lashings, it took maybe almost a week. Now with the proper help, we can do it in 2 days. And I think that mostly we can blame it on the women for it being so fast now. As I mentioned previously, Women, they take instructions very well and they apply it very well, and there's no need to go back and redo it. Okay, so the one on the right is that same canoe. So if you can zoom in on it now, you'll notice that all the root is on the wood now and the bark. And then now the canoe on the left was the same canoe you've seen my little doggy on. Okay, and this gentleman here never participated in a canoe build before, but he was very keen. He had been sober now for quite some time, and he was a very quick learner, although he did make some mistakes that were easily corrected. He was there every day, and yeah, he turned out to be a very good helper. And this was in St. Catharines again. And here's that school again. The gentleman you see is the woodworking teacher. We became really good friends. We stay in contact quite often. And then the picture on the right is the same canoe. And the only difference is now, if you notice the clamps on the wood, it's because we steamed the wood and we're bending them upwards in the traditional canoe style at the end. So once they cool off, we'll be able to remove the clamps and we'll put the root on. And then we'll move forward. We'll move more towards the end. Next one, Jean-François. Okay. The picture on the left is a community called Curve Lake, and they're Ojibwe people. They live on the Trent Severn Waterway, and the name of the lake where the reserve is called Buckhorn Lake. And so the one on the front one is one that I had made for my friend, and I took it there just for display. So the one that I built at the reserve is the one the closest to the wall. As you can see, the ribs are in and it's drying now. And so after 2 days, then we take the ribs out and then we cut them all, and then it's ready to be installed permanently. And just like the one on the right, the one on the right is just north of Perth, which is called Lanark. And this was done in one of my friend's offices. And ironic enough, again, is I had maybe 5 helpers. 3 of them were women. And as you can see, there's a very, very nice shaped canoe. And I got to hand it to the women again. They were very good help. Yes. Okay, and this is in Curve Lake, but the reason why we chose this picture is to again confirm that women played a huge role in canoe making. And what we mean by that is when a man grew up and he met his wife, they both possessed knowledge of canoe making. And it was confirmed when I started seeing pictures. I seen pictures up near Lac Bourrier. I seen the old man and his wife, and then first thing you know, it was the same man and his wife, and now they had children. And in some cases, the children were a boy and a girl, and so it just made it made sense that the young woman possessed the knowledge as well of canoe making. And so I included this here just to show the people that women played a huge role in canoe making. You know, that the one in the white is the mother, and then the small one is the daughter. And so both had never done a canoe before. And so as you can see, they're doing a fantastic job. And once again, it's because they take instructions very well, and importance to detail. And this was the canoe I did in Ottawa West, and they decided that they were going to portage it to where we put it in the water. And the traffic that stopped there all peeped the horn, and they were very amazed. And I give all the credit to the children and the kids for doing this. Okay, so the picture on the left, I'm not sure if you recognize the woman that's standing with me. And that's was the Minister of Environment, Catherine McKenna. Excuse me. We held a very important ceremony, and it was to acknowledge that the minister was there as part of the ceremony to take care of the environment. She was presented with a sacred bundle. Bundle could be eagle feather, smudge bowl, medicines, and I don't think they would have given her a pipe, because in order to get a sacred pipe, you have to do a lot of work. What I mean by that is you have to seek out elders and get teachings, and then you apply those teachings, and they judge that not by your attitude, but on the actions that you partake in. And so then the picture on the right is the same canoe again that we've seen on the water. This is the students, the summer staff from Murphy's Point Provincial Park. And they're scraping the canoe. And they're able to scrape the canoe because it's, we call that winter bark. Winter bark comes in late August. And it stays, it's almost like a protective layer for the winter. So we can harvest, if we have a nice autumn, we can harvest it. And we can harvest it, well, in the winter we can't because it's frozen. But then when it starts to thaw out in the spring, then we can harvest with that layer on there. And as you can see, what they're doing is they wet the bark with a rag, and then they scratch away that layer. And what they're doing right now is in that park, well, before I'd say that, it's called a rat snake. And from what I understood, the rat snake is an endangered species. But for some reason in that park there, they're okay. And so they're putting a symbol of the rat snake on the canoe, and to symbolize that in that park, the rat snake is okay. And so these kids did a fantastic job. Okay. So these canoes here, the canoe on the left is one that I seen. I think it was done by Sarrazin from Golden Lake, or what's it called, La Vallée, or some family like that, but up in Golden Lake, Ontario. But the one on the left, that's the canoe that I brought with me to the ceremony with Catherine McKenna, the minister. And we brought that canoe in to symbolize reconciliation. And yeah, it was a good ceremony. It's unfortunate that the current government, or the current government then, as any government, they keep shuffling around their ministers. And so Miss McKenna couldn't or didn't stay an environmental minister. After the second term Liberal, she got shuffled to the Minister of Women or something like this. And she eventually resigned. But this canoe was there at the ceremony. Okay, so here we are in Murphy's Point again. And the good thing about when I build canoes in the public, anybody can come along and participate. And in this instance, in this case, was a young, I think, 10-year-old boy, asked me if he could try. And I said, sure, but just be careful, because one slip and you cannot replace that part that you scraped off. So if you notice there, if you look up near the wood, the bark is dry, but where he's doing his thing, we took the rag and we wet the bark. So I think he made I don't know, looks like a fish. Because my helper then was from the sturgeon clan, or no, the Muscalonge clan. So he's finishing the Muscalonge. And this picture is in Kingston again. They have the St. Lawrence College, and this where the canoes are hanging is a new addition. And so they contacted me, asked me if I had 2 canoes for sale. Well, the one on top is, I made that one in a school at Smith Falls. And the one at the bottom was my canoe. And I built that for me. But when I don't want to seem like I'm hungry for money, but they offered me an amount that was equal to 1/2 of my yearly salary. So I sold them, the 2 of them. But there on the left, it describes, or it tells of why I did that and why they did that, and it acknowledged me as being a canoe maker from Kitigan Zibi. And so these canoes now will never ever touch the water again. And so, okay, so the one on the left is, you look at the bottom, it's me and a friend of mine, James Raffin. James Raffin is a very avid canoer. He's canoed all over the world. And he asked me if I was interested in doing this thing for, I forget the name of the club, but that was here in Ottawa. But the picture that they had showed above was a picture of my grandfather. My grandfather's in the wheelchair. And this would have been his maybe 96th, 97th birthday. And about a year later, not even a year later, he passed away. And yeah, and then the one on the right is the canoe you've seen at that college that was hanging up. This is the canoe. This is the students that we made the canoe with. So this was after we put it in the water. We tested it and we took it for a ride. And I see all the happy faces. Okay, here's the Ottawa West canoe build again. And as you can see, a lot of interest from the students. And what's memorable for me is I had 2 students come and they self-identified as native people. And the principal told me that they never mentioned that they had native ancestry in them. But the minute we started making the canoe, they felt like they had to say it. And so this really touched me, and that kind of signified that I'm doing the right thing. And like I said previously, the canoe, for some reason, helps you reconcile within yourself. And so I guess there was a reconciliation that went on within them. And they felt the need to share that they had native ancestry. Okay, the one on the left again is that same school. And the one in the middle is the canoe that I did with the women in Kingston. So as you can see, it came together very nice. It's a beautiful canoe. I must admit that was one of my best shaped canoes. and you can see it on the water on the right. And the woman with me is a member of provincial parliament for Ontario. I forget what her ministry is, but she took the time out of her busy schedule to come down and kind of how do you say that? Bless our inaugural trip. And then she was coaxed by the other women to get in with and go for a ride with me. Yeah. And here's that canoe from the Canoe Museum, the 16-footer I made. And this was the name of the project that they had given it. And I showed this to Jean-Francois the other night, and they named it the Jiman project. Jiman is canoe in Ojibwe. In Algonquin, there's a slight variation. It's Chiman, not Jiman. It's Chiman, and that would be Algonquin. And so if you notice the pictures in the poster, I have those two guys with me again, those two apprentices that I had. And the picture on the top again, you see that there's a woman involved. And then the last picture at the bottom is one of the chiefs of the local reserves, Hiawatha Reserve. So this was a very emotional, memorable canoe for me. Okay, so this is a wigwam. And I didn't know until I started making the wigwam that the real name is picklegun. And so that would have been the Algonquin word for picklegun, for wigwam. And so, as you can see, there's a fire inside. That's just for photography. Excuse me. And it's the same wigwam but different angle. So the fire was to symbolize that somebody's in there. It's wintertime, and we're able to cook. And then there's a hole at the top, just like a teepee. And so we didn't have time to put a moose hide for the door. And so this picklegun, it went to the Museum of History. And I don't know if the audience is familiar with the Museum of History, but in the back, they have a big statue of Chief Tessawat. And Chief Tessawat would have been one of the last hereditary chiefs of the Algonquin Nation. But he's the one of the chiefs that met Samuel Champlain, when he first came up the Ottawa River. And he must have gifted Tessawat with many gifts, because Tessawat let him through, and he went up the Ottawa River, and thus became the Hudson Bay fur trade eventually. And so the reason why I bring up Chief Tessawat, this wigwam was supposed to be set up near the statue, but because of COVID, I think they have it in storage inside now. And so, but more and more schools are asking for wigwam bills, picklegun. And so here, once again, there we have the canoe from St. Lawrence College, and I'm saying a few words, acknowledging that we're on traditional, unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin territory, even though we're in Kingston. And then the other one I can't really see because. Okay, so that would have been a canoe that I made in Perth there at Murphy's Point Provincial Park. And the paddles that you see were made by a friend of mine, and he used the ashwood. I don't know how you say ashwood in French. I think it's frêne. And everybody probably knows what's going on with the ashwood. The emerald ash borer is destroying our ash. And so these paddles were made out of ash wood from Murphy's Point Provincial Park again. And my friend looked them over. He took the bark off and he noticed that there was no bugs inside. So he decided to make 2 paddles for the park. Any questions so far?
So that's it for the beautiful pictures that you shared with us, Chuck. If you want, we may open the floor for people to discuss with you or ask you questions.
That'd be fine. I just wanna show the people my little project. It's the same as a big canoe. Yeah, everything inside is the same thing as a big canoe. And oddly enough, it's only 3 feet long, but it takes just as long to fabricate.
And just before we came online, Chuck, you mentioned that you were working at a symbol that First Nation were using as a sign of peace to come for a harvest.
Yes. Well, that I didn't mention previously that I was at a meeting for the environment once again, and they had some Anishinaabe people, Algonquin people, and they had the Mohawk people. And so one of them was a very famous elder, Mohawk elder, is Henry Lickers, his name. Somebody asked him a question: how wide were the boundaries? And then he said, it's probably 50 miles or more. And so the one that asked the question looked very confused. And then he says, well, he says, that's when you get the treaty of the 1 dish, 1 spoon. He says, we knew that we needed to harvest in the Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. And just like we knew the Algonquin and the Anishinaabe people needed to come in our territory to harvest, gather, whatever, food. And he says, that's when we made that treaty. He says, by making this treaty now, if you wear these symbols or you have the symbol itself, then we know that you're coming in peace. And the same thing applies to us. He says, so and then the guy that answered the question or asked the question, you could see him like scratching his head, you know, yeah, I understand now, I understand. And he says, only within the last 200 years where they come with a very razor thin boundary line, you know? And so that made a lot of sense. But if you want, I'll give you a tour of what I'm building downstairs to represent that. I was asked to do that for a museum up near Barrie, Ontario.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want, Chuck, at the same time, I could read you a few comments that we have in the chat of the presentations. People are saying that your paddles are beautiful. We have a question, Judy asking, what is a wigwam made of?
The same thing, it's birch. And the frame, it could be anything. It could be birch, it could be cedar, it could be maple, ash. And so this is what I'm doing. I don't know if you can see this.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so this is what I'm involved with right now. And see, it looks like a dish. And here's the big spoon.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so this is going to represent that treaty now. That treaty has been over 500 years old. And so, and this is my stash of bark. I have some all over. I have some, I have some right here. These are for my next 2 canoe builds. Yeah, I have one roll here. I don't know if you can see that. Yes?
Yes, absolutely.
This is 44 inches wide. And so I need minimum I need is 40, 42. So that's going to be good. And then once again, I'll show you some posters. Here's that poster of the Gmon project.
Yeah.
And this poster here is I was in Niagara Falls near Buffalo, Ontario, Buffalo, New York. And we did a canoe build there. But that picture you've seen of me and my grandmother, this is the canoe.
Wow, it's beautiful.
Yeah. And that's what we were talking about the other night. This is the most photographed birch bark canoe in the world. Yeah. And then if I go swing over here, this is the canoe I made for the museum up where my friend lives there. It's part of the Algonquin Nation. But they had not seen a canoe build there in almost 100 years.
Wow,
So
100 years.
Yeah, so we made some history. And this is the canoe that's hanging in the college. So that's pretty well it for my my workshop. I do
great.
baskets too. Pardon?
Okay.
And well, there's one right here. This is what I originally got into.
Okay.
Yeah, see a little container with the top. And so,
Nice
do you know where the Kumik is?
No.
It's at Indigenous Affairs in Gatineau, Hull.
Okay.
Every January before the pandemic, I was there and making baskets with the employees. And so here's when I started. And and that's what got me back to doing birch bark.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, because I wanted to honor my grandmother, right?
And Chuck, if that's okay with you, we have a dozen questions in the chat that I could read you aloud if you want to respond.
Okay, well, I'll go upstairs now then, Jean-Francois.
Okay, and thank you for sharing your special space for creation.
Well, I'm glad I bought this house because it allowed me to start making canoes in the winter.
The next question that we have is from Michael. What makes a birch a great canoe birch?
What makes a birch a great canoe birch?
Yep.
That's a good question. Because of the environment is so confused, Mother Earth is so confused now, it's hard to determine what is a good birch. And so, in my opinion, when I was growing up, I went to many places with my grandfather, and he was saying then, I overheard him saying that 1 out of every 200 trees is suitable for birch, suitable for canoe. Now you fast forward 50 years later, it's 1 out of every 500. But what makes it a good canoe birch is the layers don't separate. I don't know if you understand what I mean. Let me get something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so this, you look at this, and if it doesn't separate like this, see the way it separates?
Yes.
That's no good.
No.
And so the first test we do is we take the bark and we fold it. We fold it on itself. When we bring it back, if it sticks together, then we know that's a good canoe birch.
Okay.
And it has nothing to do with what the tree looks like on the outside. Because I had many people tell me, oh, I got a canoe birch on my property. Well, I get there, I do the test, and then the layers, they separate. That's no good.
No.
And in some cases, I go 500 miles.
Wow, so it's really a biology thing, yeah.
Yeah, so the tree could look good, but you have to do the test.
The other question that we have is from Martin, asking if you are giving canoe construction lessons.
Not privately.
It's more as a group.
Well, it's more of a school group now.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm always interested in groups. What I kind of tend to keep a secret is where and when I go harvest. But once again, if I was a millionaire, I would do it for free. Because like I said before, everybody that I show or comes by the canoe participates, and they want to go and do something for the environment. They want to help protect the land, help protect the water, because without the water, there was no need for the canoe. And in your case, your group, they would have no place to go paddle. You know?
Next question is from Chris. Many thanks for sharing the presentation, stories, and reflections this evening. How long does it take to construct a birch bark canoe from start to finish with a group of helpers? If we have a group of youth interested to learn to build a canoe together, is this possible to do with you?
My best time, just the construction, is 7 days. Now, I wanted to share this story with you during the presentation, but I went off track a little bit. I forgot. So I'll share it now. I heard a story about my great-grandfather. You've seen him with his wife. You've seen him paddling in the small canoe. Well, the story goes that he was coming from a river up in the park of Andre. I think the name of the river was the Jean de Terre. And so they were coming down. And there was, I think, 4 or 5 kids. Him and his wife were in a big canoe. And they happened to notice on the riverbank there was a man there. Well, the man was either he was injured or he was sick, and he needed to get to the hospital in Maniwaki. So my grandfather, they pull over on the side, and he says, well, you come in the canoe. He said, I'll stay behind. My family could take you to Maniwaki and get you to the hospital right away. And so in less than 24 hours, he gathered enough material and put together a canoe, and he took off, and he met his wife and family in Maniwaki the following day. And so, but you have to go back maybe 100 years. But that's just to give you an idea that the material was so plentiful, and because of his knowledge, he was able to take that material within, let's say, a quarter mile, quarter kilometer, half a kilometer, and put it together and make a canoe in less than 24 hours.
That's unbelievable. Huh?
But getting back to, was it Martin?
Yes.
His question, well, if we take into account harvesting and preparing, you're looking at least 200 hours of just gathering, preparing. Yeah. And so now then you add the week, the 10 days. If I'm in a group and we have really good helpers, it'll be 10 days, we'll have a canoe. And so it'll be a month worth of gathering and preparing, and then 10 days to put the canoe together.
It's quite a project. And next question that we have is from Frank asking, he says, very interesting presentation, incredible talent and culture. Will the presentation be available on the internet? Yes, it will be on YouTube, and I will put the link on the website, on the Facebook page of Radisson. Mary says, thank you so much from Kingston, Chuck. Such wonderful memories we have from your build here.
Mary Farrar?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, it's her that brought me to Kingston.
And you have a big EXO here too. From Michael, you have, I noticed that there aren't any seats in the canoe. Is that to save weight, keep a lower center of gravity? Do you build in a kneeling thwart?
I didn't quite catch that, Jean-François.
He says you don't have seats in the canoe. Is that to save weight? Is it to keep a lower center of gravity? Do you build in a kneeling thwart?
No, but it is to have a lower center of gravity, or buoyancy, they call it. And what I found about the canoe, like I built one canoe, we've seen it in the presentation there, it was 28 pounds. 12-foot canoe. But I seen a picture of a 12-foot canoe. It was carrying two men, their hunting and trapping gear with the fur, and in the middle had a moose. And so we estimate that they're 1,500, 1,800 pounds. And there was a good 6 inches before the water would come over the gunwale. And so this was probably the reason why the Hudson's Bay furs, they learned how to make the canoe, and then they made the big Voyageur canoes, but they could load that on. I seen a canoe at a museum in Peterborough, the Canoe Museum. They have an authentic 36-foot birch bark canoe. It weighs 280 pounds, but carries 7 tons.
7 tons.
7 tons. That's 14,000 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that made it really convenient, really ideal, for the terrain and the territory.
But it's a technology that was developed by your nation over thousands of years. It's remarkable. Chuck, we still have a dozen more questions. From Martin, we have how long can you keep your birch before making a canoe?
Oh, forever.
Okay.
Because when remember I was telling you my grandfather asked me to make him a canoe. Well, before that, I was in Nova Scotia, and I was teaching a group of Mi'kmaq, how to make the model canoes. Well, after the project was over, they wanted a full-size canoe. And so I quickly learned that there's no more birch in Nova Scotia.
Wow.
Because of overlogging. So there, the only place that I knew was, well, okay, I'll take 2 guys with me and we'll come to Kitigan Zibi. So we looked, we couldn't find any birch. So I went to my grandfather. My grandfather went in his garage and he came out with a roll of bark. He says, you could have this. And so he says, I've been keeping this 15 years. And then when I got it, I kept it another 6 years. So 21 years in storage, but it has to be in a dry, cool place. It can't be out in a dry, hot place because the bark it curls.
A question about that from myself, if I may insert myself in all those good questions, Chuck, is that is it true that before the winter, sometimes Algonquin people would submerge the canoe in the water in the fall, so it will be preserved in the water over the winter, and they would take it out in the spring? Is this something that was done sometimes? Or?
Well, I've never really seen anything to confirm that, although I did read about it. But I've never come across any information that confirms that. I know the old man, he used to say, whenever you're not using your canoe, either bring it inside or store it upside down.
Okay.
Because you don't want the water to get reabsorbed in the wood.
No.
Because what happens in the wood, the canoe gets heavy again.
That's it.
What I heard was there was so many canoe makers, and the material was so plentiful that say I go across the lake and then instead of portaging the canoe, I leave the canoe there, and where I'm going to go to the other lake, there's a canoe there too. So I leave the canoe that I landed, I leave it there for the next guy or on my way back, because I know there's a canoe over there. So this is what I heard. Now it's like I said, there's nothing that was confirmed, but it made more sense.
Yes.
Although it probably was a technique that was used, you submerge it under the ice.
Yeah. Next question, Chuck, is from Noel. He asked, could you say more about efforts to protect canoe birch trees or big trees being located and then protected? Also, is anyone still making canoes up at Barriere Lake?
Yes, there's some families that have got back into making it. I don't really know the family name anymore. I know the last canoe builder was it Jerome or Miranda? He's the one made the canoe for Pierre Trudeau. I think it was Clifford Miranda or Jerome, the family name. But then things fell apart and then they didn't make them no more. But now the younger ones, now they decided that they were going to start again. And so it's making a comeback. And then to answer the question about preserving the birch, is we're working very closely with the ministry. And we're trying to have them to make them understand that even if you pass over the roots, it has an effect on the tree. And so if we can keep the machine away from the tree, then there's a good chance that the tree will survive. Although I went up to Chapleau, Ontario, and the guy that brought me there, he brought me to a clear cut. So they took all the trees except the birch. Now what happened to the birch is the bark got so brittle that you couldn't bend it, it would break. Because if you, let's say the birch is here and then there's another tree here and it's keeping some of the sun away, you take that tree off, it has an effect on the birch.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like what they call a symbiotic relationship.
Yes.
Yes, so you take one, you affect the other.
Next question that we have is, thanks Chuck for the presentation. How much did your 16-footer weight? And do you have to apply some sort of all finish to preserve it over time?
No. The only thing that we replace, because we know that even though the resin is very flexible after we put the fat in, it's not prone to cracking if you bump it. So what we learned about, let's say I go out on a hunting party with men in my community, in my tribe, we bring 5 canoes. Well, after each day, they always got one guy, and it rotated, but one guy would go around and look at all the canoes. And then if the canoe needed repairing of the resin, then he would apply the resin.
And what would you say was the weight of a 16-foot canoe?
I think they weighed it in at about 60, between 60 and 65 pounds.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. It's even better than the Royalex from Esquif.
That's funny because somebody told me, oh, it doesn't weigh anything like my Kevlar canoe.
That's it.
Yeah. So and then another guy, he was Ojibwe from Curve Lake. He says, that's funny. He says, but I remember taking a canoe trip in the Kevlar canoe, and he says we were miles from anywhere. And we ran over a rock and the Kevlar tore. So there was a rip in the canoe, and then everybody thought, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to use to fix it? So he took a workshop, and then so it came to him, and he went out and he got a piece of bark. He got some resin, and then he went and get some root, and he put it on the Kevlar. He put the bark on the Kevlar with the root, and then he sealed it up with the resin, and then they were able to make it back.
Wow.
Yeah, so
that is
old
amazing.
meets new, but old fixed
Yes.
new. Yeah.
No, that's truly amazing. Next question, Chuck, and you tell me when you have enough and you want a break, okay? But we will have quite a few more questions. There's quite a big interest. Next question is from Michael. Traditionally, how long did the birch canoe last for a family?
Okay, so I estimated to be 5-6 generations.
Really?
That's with proper maintenance.
Wow.
Well, I don't know if you heard too, I think maybe 5-10 years ago, the Canoe Museum once again got a canoe back from some general or from this, I don't know, it was even before the Civil War. So I think the Ojibwe gifted him with a canoe, and then he took it back to England. And then he didn't have use for it, so he put it in his barn, but he put it on the ground. And if you look at this canoe, the canoe right here was sitting on the ground in the barn, and it rotted the canoe. So only the middle where it was touching the ground, it rotted, and they estimate the canoe to be 250 years old.
Wow.
Everywhere else, the bark was good. And I seen that canoe, and they asked me if I was interested in repairing it, and I says, well, whenever you're ready, let me know. I'd like to be involved with that. That's history.
Wow, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's quite amazing. We have a message from Trevor as well, who says, thank you for sharing the story of your journey. Somebody else says, a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for sharing with us and keeping this tradition alive. Frank asked, is there a best time of the year to harvest the birch, where it is easier to remove it from the tree?
The best time is the second week of June. And we're not exactly sure on the date, but we had signs. The Anishinaabe Algonquin people had signs, and one of the signs was, you know what the firefly is?
Yes.
Yeah, you see that at night there, he lights up?
Yes.
It says when you first start to see that there, it takes about 1, maybe 2 weeks, and then there's lots.
Yes.
And then once there's lots, then that's the best time to take the bark off the tree.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's if you knock the tree down and you make the cut up the middle, you can hear it. It's unsealing itself.
Really? It's like a rip.
And it's too bad I couldn't share. I have a video on my phone. I don't know how to put it on my laptop, but I found one like this, and then I took a video of it. And have you ever gone on the ice when the ice is first forming in the fall?
Yes.
You get the black ice and you hear that the ice is cracking.
Yes.
Well, that's what it reminded me of when I made my line down the middle, and then I just helped the edge, and you can hear it.
Wow.
It sounded just like ice cracking.
It's like ripped for harvest.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So that's the best, to me, that's the best time. And like, there's no time limit, because like we mentioned earlier, Mother Earth is so confused right now. Once you start seeing the fireflies, then it's time to go in the woods. And so we try and stay in the woods there maybe 1-2 weeks.
It's amazing, Chuck, all this knowledge and wisdom. The next question is, thanks for that inspiring teaching, very impressive, great knowledge shared with us. You have now a fan in Saint-Georges-de-Beauce in Quebec. Eric. Martin says, thank you from Quebec City. So interesting, and you have all my respect. Brian says, hi, Chuck. Brian Roadhouse, good to see you again. Do you know if there will be a powwow in Ottawa this year? And will you be there if there is? Great presentation.
No, I won't be there because I'm, well, maybe because I have a canoe build in Ottawa in June at one of the local high schools. But if things can continue to open up, I don't see why they wouldn't have the powwow. Unfortunately, I won't be able to bring a canoe for display, because it seems like every time I make a canoe for me, somebody wants it.
And the last comment that we have is from Trevor, who says, my friend made Pierre Trudeau a paddle out of walnut and gave it to him in 1997. You mentioned you made the canoe, that someone made the canoe for him, and that story came back to me. Philip says, thanks a lot from Quebec. You made me paddle a birch bark canoe now. And Judy says, we see fireflies in our backyard. When we see them now, I'll be thinking of harvesting our birch bark.
That's funny.
Well, Chuck, thank you so much. That's it for all the questions. And thank you for the generosity of your time as well. Most grateful. I don't know if you would like to say a little something at the end. You have already given us a lot.
Well, it seems like it went by so fast.
It is.
Yeah,
It did.
I really don't feel like going. But I'd like to share, maybe if I can find this picture that I've seen there of Pierre Trudeau and the skin coat he had.
Yes.
You've seen this picture?
Yes, of course. It's a famous one.
My grandmother made that coat.
You're kidding.
And if my memory serves me correct, I was helping her tan the hide.
Come on, really?
But at
I've
the
seen
time,
this picture so many times. I was thinking about that coat. What a beautiful coat.
yeah, and it's at the Canoe Museum now in Peterborough.
Really? With
Yeah.
with all the
fringe.
without the fringe.
And the funny thing about it is she asked me to help her tan the hide.
Wow.
And she never mentioned who it was for. There, maybe 20, 25 years later, I finally find out that that belonged to Pierre Trudeau. I go, holy shit, man. That's
history.
that's history.
That's history in the making.
Exactly. And so I right away when I seen this on Facebook tonight, I comment on it, and I don't know what if anybody commented back.
Yeah.
But it's
No,
a sense of pride.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much again, Chuck, for sharing, and thank you everyone for coming and joining this talk tonight. And hope to see you again, Chuck.
Well, can I finish with a little prayer?
Absolutely.
Okay, just everybody just clear their minds. And so, oh great Spirit, whose voice we hear in the winds and whose breath gives life to the world, hear us. We are small and weak. We need your strength and wisdom. Make our eyes ever behold in red and purple sunrise, and make our hands respect everything you have made. Make our ears sharp to hear the messages you have left for everyone, everywhere, and continue teaching us the ways of old. And help us connect our mind with our hearts so that when we make important decisions in life, we come from a place of loving in our heart. Give us strength, O great Spirit, not to be better than our brothers and sisters, but to fight our own worst enemy, ourselves. So that when life fades, our spirits will come to you without shame. Oho, mitakwiyas, all my relations. Miigwech.
Yes. and thank you for this prayer as well. It was very moving and deep. And have a wonderful evening, Chuck.
Well, just want to let anybody know there that they can get my email address from you or from
yes.
the link.
What I will do right away is that I will bring back the presentation right away. It did not work out. I will try again. I'll pretend that I'm good with technology. And there we go. Okay. Oh, it doesn't want to. So what I will do is, let me see. We'll go at the top. Bear with me. Okay, do you see the slide?
Not me.
Okay. So let me check if it's still there, like that. Like that. Do you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, so here we have your email, Instagram, Facebook,
All right.
so people can reach you. You have a beautiful Instagram account with a lot of those nice pictures that we saw, and many more, as well as all those events that you have, and you are doing a lot of outreach for reconciliation as well.
Yes.
And thank you so much, Chuck, for your commitment and your generosity. I've been looking for you for a full year, and finally we connected, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah, I have to share with people too. I applied for a grant at Canada Council for the Arts to build a canoe here in Thurso. Unfortunately, I got some bad news today. They didn't approve it because it was my dream to build a canoe down by where they call Parc Plaisance.
Okay.
Parc National de Plaisance, and
Yes.
and it was my dream to build one there, but unfortunately they didn't approve my grant.
And your grant was with which department, Chuck?
Canada Council for the Arts,
Ah, okay.
the federal grant.
Okay. Yes.
So that didn't deter me, because I have another friend who knows has some connections with the grants for Quebec.
Yes.
So we're going to apply for one there, and maybe we'll be able to get some money there and then build one here. And then because it's my dream there to have, like, if you were to show up, François, I'll put you to work, even if it's 5 minutes. And then I swear to God, it's you know exactly which one, even if it's to do, one of these.
Yes.
Yeah, you know exactly which one you did. And then you got that proud, and say, well, I helped on that canoe. Yeah.
Well, Chuck, let's talk about that with the Department of Culture in Quebec. We can talk a bit more about this in terms of asking for their support.
Yes, and that's what I wanted to say there, is we'll keep in touch, you and I.
Absolutely.
Whether it's Facebook, FaceTime, text message.
Absolutely, and we'll find a way to make this happen.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you for your time. It's
okay.
It's that to come to an end already.
Yes,
Yeah,
and thank you, and have a nice evening. And now you can have a good rest after this long day.
No, yeah, it's going to be hard to sleep because I'm all wired up. Yeah. And then because what happens then is, oh geez, I forgot to tell him this. I should have told him that.
Okay.
Take care, my friend. We'll stay in touch.
Absolutely.
Okay, bye for now.